Look at your hands for a second. If you haven't turned 70 yet, those hands still feel like they belong to someone with endless tomorrows. But the moment you cross that invisible line, a quiet, irreversible shift happens. The world changes its rules for you overnight, and nobody warns you about what is actually coming. This isn't about scare tactics or gloomy predictions. It is about the raw, unfiltered reality of entering the platinum decade of your life. If you are approaching this milestone, or if you have already crossed it, you need to understand the profound transformations that are already in motion. I remember waking up the morning after my 70th birthday. I felt exactly the same as I did the day before, or so I thought. I walked into the kitchen, reached up to the highest shelf to grab my favorite coffee mug, and the sharp, unfamiliar twinge shot straight through my shoulder. It wasn't just a minor physical ache, it was a wake-up call. As I sat there sipping my coffee, looking out at the morning sun, it hit me. The warranty on my youth had officially expired. The terms and conditions of my existence had completely rewritten themselves while I was sleeping. I wasn't just getting older anymore. I had arrived at the destination we spend our whole youth trying not to think about. That morning forced me to look at the road ahead with absolute, undeniable clarity. The most immediate change you experience is a complete overhaul of how your body handles energy and recovery. When you are younger, your body is incredibly forgiving. You can skip a night of sleep, eat terrible food, push yourself through grueling physical labor, and bounce back within 24 hours. Once you hit 70, your body stops negotiating with you. It starts enforcing strict boundaries. Every single choice you make now carries an immediate price tag. If you overexert yourself working in the garden, you don't just feel tired the next day. You feel it deep in your bones for a week. Your metabolism slows to a crawl, and your muscles require deliberate daily effort just to maintain their baseline strength. The terrifying part isn't the decline itself, but how stealthily it happens. You don't wake up one day suddenly unable to move. Instead, you slowly realize that tasks which used to require zero thought now demand careful planning. You start calculating how many flights of stairs you have to climb, or how far away the parking spot is from the store entrance. Your physical framework demands respect, and if you refuse to give it, it will simply lock you down until you listen. A beautiful yet startling shift occurs within your own mind. For decades, you have carried the heavy burden of caring what other people think about you. You wore the masks required by your career, your social circles, and your family obligations. You smiled when you wanted to frown, and you stayed silent when you wanted to scream. When you cross into your 70s, that exhausting social filter completely dissolves. You suddenly realize that you no longer have the time or the energy to waste on superficial politeness or toxic relationships. You stop attending gatherings out of mere obligation. You speak your mind with a level of honesty that might shock younger people. You lose the desire to impress anyone, anywhere, ever again. This isn't about becoming bitter or rude. It is about reaching a state of pure, unadulterated authenticity. You realize that your time is the most valuable currency you possess, and you refuse to spend it on fake conversations or people who drain your spirit. It is incredibly liberating, but it can also alienate people who prefer the compliant, quiet version of you that existed in the past. Society has a strange, uncomfortable way of dealing with people who have reached their 7th decade. Without your permission, the world places an invisibility cloak over your shoulders. When you walk down the street, younger generations look right through you. In retail stores, customer service representatives might speak to the person next to you instead of addressing you directly. In professional or community discussions, your opinions are often smiled at politely and then promptly ignored, dismissed as remnants of a bygone era. It is a jarring psychological shift. You still feel like the exact same vibrant, intelligent, capable person you were at 30 or 40. Inside your mind, the fire burns just as brightly. But to the outside world, you have suddenly become a background character. Navigating this newfound invisibility requires immense internal strength. You have to learn to validate yourself from within, rather than relying on society to acknowledge your presence or your worth. If you don't prepare for this shift, the sudden lack of validation can lead to an overwhelming sense of isolation and irrelevance. Whether you like it or not, hitting 70 means entering a season of profound letting go. The reality of mortality becomes something you can no longer relegate to the back of your mind. Your inner circle begins to shrink, not just because you are choosing to walk away from superficial friendships, but because life begins to take people away. You start checking the obituary pages with a sense of regularity that would have horrified your younger self. You lose childhood friends, former colleagues, and siblings. Every loss leaves a permanent vacancy in your life story. You look around and realize there are fewer and fewer people left who remember the world as you remember it, or who knew you when you were young and reckless. This constant thinning of your social fabric forces you into a state of perpetual grief and adaptation. To survive this stage with your spirit intact, you must develop a fierce appreciation for the people who are still standing beside you. You stop taking a single phone call or a shared lunch for granted, because you know with absolute certainty that any goodbye could be the final one. When you are young, the concept of later is a magical, infinite land where all your dreams, travel plans, and self-improvement goals live. You promise yourself that you will write that book, take that trip, forgive that old enemy, or take care of your health later. The most profound and definitive thing that happens when you turn 70 is the total destruction of that illusion. You look at the statistics, you look at your own body, and you realize that later has finally run out. The future is no longer a vast ocean stretched out before you. It is a river with a clearly visible bend in the distance. This realization brings a crushing weight, but it also delivers an unparalleled sense of urgency and clarity. Deferred dreams must happen now, or they will never happen at all. Unspoken words of love must be muttered today, or they will remain unsaid forever. Grudges that you carried for 30 years suddenly look incredibly foolish and small. You stop living for some distant tomorrow and become violently anchored in the present moment. This shift changes how you look at a simple sunrise, how you taste your food, and how you spend a quiet afternoon. The ticking of the clock becomes louder, but instead of inducing panic, it clarifies exactly what matters and what you need to cast aside. Reaching 70 places, you at a definitive crossroads. The changes that happen to your body, your mind, and your social world are completely non-negotiable. They will happen whether you approve of them or not. But while you cannot control the arrival of these shifts, you possess absolute control over your response to them. You can choose to view this stage as a slow, agonizing retreat from life, curling up in bitterness and mourning the past. Or you can choose to see it as the ultimate distillation of your existence. You have shed the nonsense, the vanity, and the exhausting expectations of youth. What is left is the truest, most resilient version of yourself. Prepare yourself for these realities long before they arrive, so that when you finally step across that threshold, you can look the world square in the eye, fully prepared for the final, most meaningful chapter of your journey.